The city of Los Angeles was full of bright lights. Flashing cameras lit up the night as fancy cars stopped one after another in front of a huge, fancy building, the Crystal Hotel. This was one of the biggest and fanciest hotels in the city. Many famous people were arriving. Movie stars, rich business people, and important guests walked on a long red carpet while photographers and reporters took their pictures. To the world, this was just another big Hollywood party. But for Rosa Esteban, a 62-year-old cleaning lady, this was just another night at work. Inside the hotel, guests laughed and talked while drinking champagne and eating tiny fancy snacks. But Rosa and her team walked through the secret hallways, cleaning every part of the hotel so it stayed perfect. Rosa wore a navy blue uniform and pushed a cart filled with cleaning supplies. A small radio was in her pocket, playing music softly like always. But tonight, Rosa wasn't thinking about work. Her thoughts were far away. She was thinking about her grandson, Leo. Leo was 9 years old. He had been very sick for a long time. Right now, he was in the hospital, lying in bed, waiting. He couldn't run or play like other kids because of his sickness. But there was one thing that made him happy: movies. And his favorite actor in the whole world was Keanu Reeves. Leo had posters of Keanu on his walls. He had watched all his movies many times. He loved drawing pictures of John Wick, Neo, and Constantine, the characters Keanu played in movies. But there was one thing Leo wanted more than anything. "Grandma," he had asked Rosa one day, "do you promise that if you ever meet Keanu Reeves, you'll get his autograph for me?" Rosa didn't like making promises she couldn't keep. But that day, when she saw the hope in Leo's eyes, she took a deep breath and said, "I promise, my love. If I ever meet him, I'll get his autograph for you." And now, Keanu Reeves was right there, just a few steps away from her. Rosa saw him arrive at the party. He was wearing a black suit, looking handsome but simple. He wasn't like other movie stars, he wasn't showing off. He just looked kind and calm. Rosa's heart started to beat fast. This is my chance, she thought. Her hand slid into her apron pocket, and she felt Leo's notebook inside. The pages were full of his drawings, but there was one blank page, a page waiting for Keanu's signature. I have to do this, Rosa thought. But then another thought made her freeze. What if they throw me out? What if I lose my job? Rosa had worked at the Crystal Hotel for almost 20 years. There was a strict rule. The cleaning staff was not allowed to talk to guests. They had to stay invisible. Her fingers gripped the notebook tightly. But what if I don't do it? What if I let Leo down? She could see Leo in her mind, his small body under the hospital blanket, his eyes shining as he talked about Keanu Reeves. That was all Rosa needed. She took a deep breath. She took one step forward, then another. She moved carefully through the crowd, trying not to be noticed. Finally, she reached Keanu Reeves. He was standing by the bar drinking water. He had just finished talking to some guests. This was her moment. Rosa felt her hands shake as she took the notebook out of her pocket. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. No, Rosa, do this for Leo, she told herself. She took another deep breath and tried again. Mr. Reeves, excuse me. Keanu turned to look at her. His kind face showed no anger or annoyance. Instead, he looked at her with curiosity. Rosa swallowed her fear. I don't mean to bother you, she said, her voice shaking, but my grandson is your biggest fan. He's been sick for a long time, and your movies, they mean the world to him. She carefully held out the notebook with both hands. I promised him that if I ever had the chance, I would get your autograph for him. Could you sign this for him? There was a small pause. Rosa held her breath. Then a warm smile spread across Keanu's face. Of course, he said gently. What's his name? Leo. Keanu took the notebook and flipped through the pages. His eyes widened as he saw Leo's drawings, detailed pictures of John Wick, Neo, and Constantine. Wow, Keanu said, he's really talented. Rosa felt tears in her eyes. She watched as Keanu carefully wrote inside the notebook. To Leo, keep dreaming big. With love, Keanu Reeves. Then he signed his name and closed the notebook. He handed it back to Rosa and said, Tell Leo he's amazing and that I hope he keeps drawing. Rosa felt tears slide down her cheeks. Thank you. You don't know what this means to him. Keanu smiled. It's my pleasure. And with that, he turned as another guest called his name. Rosa clutched the notebook against her chest. Her heart felt light. She had done it. She had kept her promise. But just as she turned to leave, a cold voice stopped her. Rosa, we need to talk. No. Her heart froze. She knew that voice. Slowly she turned around. Standing there was Mr. Richard, her supervisor. His arms were crossed. His sharp eyes were full of anger. Richard was a strict man. He never smiled. He always wore a dark suit and walked around like he was watching everything. Rosa had never liked him. And now he was looking right at her. "Follow me," he said in a flat voice. Rosa's stomach twisted. The happy moment from seconds ago had disappeared. She looked at the notebook in her hands. Keanu's message to Leo felt like a treasure. "Please don't take this away from me," she thought. But she had no choice. She followed Mr. Richard down a dark hallway. They stopped in a quiet service area where no one could hear them. Richard turned to her. His face was cold. "What do you think you were doing out there?" he asked. Rosa swallowed. "I just asked for an autograph. For my grandson. He's sick and—" "I don't care," Richard said sharply. "You know the rules. Staff must never speak to guests." Rosa's heart sank. "Sir," she whispered, "I've worked here for 20 years. I've never broken a rule. I just wanted to do something for my grandson." Richard's eyes stayed cold. No excuses. And then he said the words that changed Rosa's life forever. Rosa stood there, her heart beating fast. Mr. Richard, her boss, stared at her with a cold face. He didn't look sorry at all. "You should have thought about that before breaking the rules," he said. Rosa clenched her fists. She felt like crying, but she didn't want to cry in front of him. It wasn't fair. She only asked for an autograph. Was that so bad? But what could she do? She was just a cleaning lady. Richard took a slow, deep breath, then said the word she had been dreading the most. "Pack your things. You're fired." Rosa gasped. It felt like someone had hit her. Fired? Just for asking for an autograph? Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Please, Mr. Richard," she said softly. "This job is all I have." "You should have thought of that before breaking the rules," he said again. His voice was cold, like he didn't care at all. Rosa swallowed hard. She could beg. She could cry. But she knew it wouldn't change anything. His mind was made up. Slowly she nodded. She held onto her notebook tightly. "Understood," she whispered. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. She didn't wait for him to tell her to leave. She didn't want him to see her cry. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her sad. Rosa stepped outside the Grand Crystal Hotel. The cold night air hit her face like a slap. She shivered, but not from the cold. Everything she had worked for was gone. She walked down the street, holding the notebook close to her chest. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She couldn't cry. She had to be strong. She thought of Thomas, her grandson. How would she tell him? How could she explain that she lost her job? Their only money gone. And for what? Her hands trembled. She looked down at the notebook. It was still there. The autograph. "To Thomas, keep dreaming big. With love, Keanu Reeves." A message of hope. A special gift for her grandson. But was it worth it? Rosa took a deep breath. She had to be strong. She had to find another job. She would figure something out. But what Rosa didn't know was that her story wasn't over yet. Inside the hotel, someone had just found out what happened. And that someone was Keanu Reeves. Inside the fancy Crystal Hotel, the party continued. People laughed, talked, and drank from shiny glasses. The rich and famous were having fun. Keanu Reeves was talking to a movie director. He didn't know anything about Rosa yet. He was just enjoying the night. But then someone interrupted him. "Mr. Reeves?" Keanu turned. A young waiter stood there looking nervous. He kept glancing around like he was afraid someone would see him talking. Keanu gave him a kind smile. "Yes." The waiter took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something. It's about the woman who asked for your autograph." Keanu frowned. "The cleaning lady?" The waiter nodded quickly. "Yes. They fired her for that, sir." Keanu's face changed instantly. His warm, friendly expression disappeared. His eyes darkened. "They fired her?" he repeated. The waiter nodded again. "Yeah. She wasn't supposed to talk to guests. Her boss caught her and fired her right away. She left the hotel a few minutes ago." Keanu's jaw tightened. He ran a hand through his hair, taking a deep breath. He looked upset. "She was just asking for an autograph," he said. "For her grandson." "I know," the waiter said. "It's not fair." Keanu's hands curled into fists. "No, it's not. It wasn't just unfair. It was mean." He thought back to the moment when Rosa had asked for his autograph. Her hands had been shaking. Her eyes had looked so full of hope, so full of love for her grandson. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She just wanted to make someone she loved happy. And now, because of that, she has lost her job? Keanu wasn't the kind of person to just stand by and do nothing. He made up his mind. "Where's the manager?" he asked. The waiter pointed across the room. Over there, sir. Keanu didn't wait. With strong, determined steps, he walked across the ballroom. People noticed him. Conversation stopped. Keanu Reeves was famous. He never caused trouble. He never made a scene. But tonight? Tonight, something was about to happen. Mr. Richard, the hotel supervisor, was talking to a rich guest when he saw Keanu coming toward him. At first, he smiled politely. But then, for just a second, his smile faltered. Something about Keanu's face made him nervous. Mr. Reeves, Richard said, still trying to sound friendly. What a pleasure. Is there something I can help you with? Keanu didn't smile. I just heard about the cleaning lady, he said. The one who asked for my autograph. Richard's face didn't change, but he stood a little straighter. Ah yes, he said. She was let go. Unfortunately, staff members are not allowed to interact with guests. It's protocol. Keanu's eyes hardened. Protocol? His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it now. You fired a woman who worked here for nearly 20 years, Keanu said. For asking for an autograph? A simple favor? Richard kept his face blank. Rules exist for a reason, Mr. Reeves. If we allow one employee to break them, others will follow. The hotel must maintain a certain level of professionalism. Keanu took a step closer. His voice dropped lower, but somehow it felt even more powerful. Tell me something, Mr. Richard, he said. Do you think that was the right thing to do? Richard hesitated. Just for a second. It's not about what I think, sir, he said. It's about company policy. Keanu's lips pressed into a thin line. Around them, people were watching. Everyone was quiet now. They all wanted to see what would happen next. The big party was supposed to be about kindness and helping people. Fancy people in fancy clothes were talking, laughing, and having a good time. But then something changed. People started noticing that the room had gotten quiet. Eyes turned to one side of the big hall. Something was happening. In the middle of the room, a man named Keanu Reeves was standing with his arms crossed. He was not just any man. He was famous. People whispered, "Is that Keanu Reeves?" A few reporters were already holding up their phones, recording. Keanu looked at a man named Mr. Richard, the manager of a fancy hotel. Keanu's face was serious, but his voice was calm. I understand the rules, he said. And I know hotels need rules. But what I don't understand is why you fired an old woman just because she was kind. The room got even quieter. People listened carefully. The woman Keanu was talking about was Rosa. She worked at the hotel as a cleaner, but today she was fired. And why? Because she had given some food to a hungry child. She hadn't stolen it. She hadn't taken it for herself. She had just wanted to help someone in need. And now she has lost her job. A woman in the crowd gasped. More whispers filled the air. People didn't like what they were hearing. Mr. Richard stood tall, trying to look like he was in control. I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves, he said. But my decision stands. Keanu's face changed. He usually didn't use his fame to ask for special favors. But tonight was different. Tonight he had to do something. He took out his phone. The whole room watched as he typed. His fingers moved quickly over the screen. Then he looked up. His face was calm, but his eyes were serious. I just posted about this, he said. I wonder how the world will feel about a hotel that fires old ladies for being kind. Mr. Richard's face turned pale. People around them took out their phones. Some of them had already seen Keanu's post. It was spreading fast. The whispers in the room turned into talking. Then the talking turned into murmurs of anger. People looked at their screens, scrolling. Some of them started recording Mr. Richard. Mr. Richard's hands shook just a little. He had seen bad news before, but never this fast. He cleared his throat. Mr. Reeves, I'm sure we can fix this, he said, his voice not as strong as before. Keanu raised an eyebrow. Oh, I'm counting on it, he said. Mr. Richard hesitated. He knew he was in trouble. There was no way out now. He took a deep breath and forced a small smile. Perhaps we acted too fast, he said. Let's talk about how to fix this. Keanu didn't blink. First, you are going to call Rosa. You are going to apologize. And you are going to give her job back. Mr. Richard looked like he had eaten a sour lemon. But he had no choice. He nodded. Of course. Right away. Rosa was walking through the cold streets, holding a small notebook close to her chest. She hadn't told her grandson Leo what had happened. How could she? Without her job, how would she pay for his medicine? His hospital visits? Their home? Then her phone rang. She looked at the number. It was the hotel. For a moment she thought about ignoring it. But then she sighed and answered. Hello, "Rosa, it's Mr. Richard," said the voice on the other end. Her stomach felt tight. "What do you want?" she asked. There was a long pause. Then Mr. Richard spoke again. "We made a mistake," he said. "We want you to come back." Rosa stopped walking. "What?" Mr. Richard cleared his throat. He didn't sound as cold as before. "We overreacted. We'd like to give you your job back. And of course we will pay you for the trouble." Rosa was shocked. Then she realized something. This wasn't because Mr. Richard had suddenly become kind. This was because of Keanu Reeves. Warmth spread through her chest. She exhaled sharply, holding the phone close. "I'll be there soon," she said. Rosa stood outside the hotel doors. Just a few hours ago, she had walked out of these same doors feeling humiliated. She had lost everything. Now she was being asked to return. She expected to feel small. She expected to feel embarrassed. But something surprising happened. As soon as she stepped inside, people clapped. She stopped, completely shocked. The hotel staff, the waiters, the guests, everyone was clapping for her. She turned her head in disbelief. Why were they cheering for her? Then she saw him. Keanu Reeves was walking toward her. His expression was kind and gentle. "Welcome back, Rosa," he said softly. Her hand shook. She looked at him, then at the crowd. "Mr. Reeves, I don't know what to say," she whispered. Keanu smiled. "Then don't say anything. Just take this." He held out an envelope. Rosa took it carefully. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a check. A very, very big check. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. This is too much," she said, her voice breaking. Keanu shook his head. "It's for Leo. For his medical expenses. For anything he needs. No strings attached." Tears filled Rosa's eyes. She couldn't believe it. Keanu Reeves, the famous actor her grandson admired so much, had just changed their lives. And yet Keanu wasn't done. "I have one more thing," he said. He pulled out another small envelope and handed it to her. Rosa's hands shook as she opened it. Inside were 2 VIP tickets. "For my next movie premiere," Keanu explained. "I'd love for you and Leo to come." Rosa's legs almost gave out. She had lost everything that night. And yet, somehow she had gained so much more. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She couldn't stop them. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "From the bottom of my heart." Keanu simply smiled. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Just tell Leo the first can't wait to meet him." And at that moment, Rosa knew kindness still existed in the world. And tonight it won. Rosa held the tickets in her hands. She felt so many emotions at once: happiness, shock, and excitement. But she had no idea that her story was just beginning. Soon the whole world would know what had happened. That night, Rosa left the big and fancy Grand Crystal Hotel. But she didn't leave as just a cleaning lady. No, she left with something she never thought she would ever have. 2 things that would change her life forever. One was a big check with enough money to help her grandson Thomas. The other was VIP tickets to meet his favorite movie star, Keanu Reeves. Rosa had spent years cleaning rooms in that hotel. She worked hard every day. But now everything has changed. And she didn't even know it yet, but her story was already spreading across the internet like a wildfire. By the time Rosa got home, she felt so tired. But she was also full of hope. She had something amazing to tell Thomas. At the same time, something big was happening online. Keanu Reeves had written about Rosa on his social media page. His message quickly became very popular. News stations started talking about Rosa's story. Everywhere on the internet, people were talking about it. Here were some of the headlines. Keanu Reeves helps a hotel worker after she was fired for asking for an autograph. Grandmother loses job after asking Keanu Reeves for an autograph. His response will make you cry. Hashtag Justice for Rosa trends worldwide after Keanu speaks out. People were angry at the hotel. They left thousands of comments on the Grand Crystal Hotel's website and social media. How can you fire someone for something so small? Keanu Reeves is a great person, but this hotel should be ashamed. She worked there for 20 years and they treated her like this? Horrible. The hotel tried to fix things. They said, "We are very sorry. It was a misunderstanding." They also promised to change their rules to be fairer to their workers. But it was too late. The world was already upset. Rosa sat on her small old couch. She was still trying to understand everything that had happened. She had just told Thomas the whole story, about Keanu, the autograph, and the wonderful gifts. Thomas, who was still weak from his sickness, hugged the notebook that Keanu had signed. It was like a treasure to him. "Grandma, do I really get to meet Keanu Reeves?" Thomas asked in a soft voice. Rosa smiled and gently ran her fingers through his hair. "Yes, my love, you do," she said. Then knock, knock, knock. A loud knock on the door made them both jump. Rosa was confused. Who could that be? She wasn't expecting anyone. She opened the door, and her heart nearly stopped. Outside, a group of reporters stood, holding cameras and microphones. "Miss Eston, can we talk to you?" one of them asked. "How do you feel about Keanu Reeves helping you? What would you like to say to the world?" Rosa's eyes widened in shock. She had spent her whole life in the background. No one had ever noticed her before. But now, the whole world wanted to hear her story. Rosa wasn't sure what to say. But then she looked back inside the house. She saw Thomas hugging the notebook, his face filled with joy. That was all that mattered. Rosa took a deep breath. She stepped forward and said, "I just want to say thank you, to Keanu, to everyone who has shown kindness. I hope this reminds people that a little kindness can change a life." The reporters quickly wrote down her words. Their cameras flashed. The world was listening. Rosa never thought she would be famous. But now her story was spreading even more. And soon, someone very unexpected would hear about it. The next few days were unbelievable for Rosa. For years she had been invisible. She worked in the background, making things clean and nice for others. But now, everyone knows her name. Rosa's story wasn't just about losing her job. It wasn't even just about Keanu Reeves helping her. Her story was about something bigger: kindness. People everywhere were talking about it. Keanu Reeves is the best person on the planet. This story made me cry. We need more kindness in the world. Rosa is like so many hardworking people out there. We should appreciate them more. Then something amazing happened. A stranger started a GoFundMe page for Rosa and Thomas. The title said, "Let's give Rosa and Thomas the life they deserve." People from all over the world started sending money. Some sent $10. Others sent $50. Some even sent $500. Within a few days, the total amount reached over $150,000. Rosa was in shock. In a short video, she said, "I don't know how to thank you all. I never expected this. But I promise, every penny will go to taking care of Thomas." Finally, the day of the movie premiere arrived. Thomas was so excited. He wore a small black tuxedo, looking just like a little movie star. Rosa held his hand as they walked on the red carpet. Flash, flash, flash. Cameras were taking their pictures. People were cheering. Then Thomas stopped. He saw Keanu Reeves standing at the end of the red carpet. Keanu was smiling. Thomas's eyes went wide. Keanu knelt down and opened his arms. "Come here, little guy," he said. Thomas ran straight into Keanu's hug. Rosa watched with tears in her eyes. Keanu took Thomas's notebook and looked at the drawings again. "You know," Keanu said, "I might need you to design some characters for my next movie." Thomas gasped. "Really?" Keanu grinned. "Absolutely." That night, Rosa and Thomas sat in the best seats at the movie theater. Not just as fans, as special guests. As the lights went down, Rosa finally let out a deep breath. Everything had changed. She had gone to work at the hotel as just a cleaner. But now she was so much more. Because of one small act of kindness, Rosa's whole world had changed. And in the end, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about fame. It was about kindness. Because sometimes, even the smallest kindness can change a life. And sometimes, kindness can change the world. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.